Good evening and welcome to ILTV Weekly, broadcasting from our news studio at Walla News. I'm Steve Leibowitz, and joining me today are Dan Diker from the Jerusalem Center for Public Affairs and veteran diplomat, Ambassador Yosef Livne. It's emerged that Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu and opposition leader Isaac Herzog planned to announce a new regional peace initiative during an abortive bid last fall to piece together a national unity government. What's in the proposal? And are there still chances that it could be used as a basis for an Israeli regional peace initiative? Before we discuss, let's hear comment from Benjamin Netanyahu made last May in 2016, as well as fresh comment from the Times of Israel diplomatic reporter Raoul Whitliff.
I take this opportunity to make clear that I remain committed to making peace with the Palestinians and with all our neighbors. The Arab Peace Initiative includes positive elements that can help revive constructive negotiations with the Palestinians. We are willing to negotiate with the Arab states revisions to that initiative so that it reflects the dramatic changes in the region since 2002, but maintains the agreed goal of 2 states for 2 peoples. To this end, we welcome the recent speech by Egyptian President Assisi and his offer to help advance peace and security in the region.
Well, Netanyahu's been referring for a long time to turning on its head the way we see the Israel-Palestinian conflict, which for many years has been understood that Israel would first make some form of deal or negotiations with the Palestinians, and that would lead to regional acceptance, further negotiations, further allies potentially across the region.
So instead of bottom up, this would be from top down.
Exactly. In terms of Trump, it's unclear, at any stage what level of understanding or interest he has in this. At that press conference, Netanyahu said in his statements, mentioned the word regional negotiations, and Trump jumped on that and said, "Oh, I didn't know you were going to mention that. I'm very pleased that you did." It was an odd moment. Netanyahu looked at him oddly, as if he was surprised at how he'd just come across this idea. So it's unclear if this is something that's been really negotiated with the Americans. In terms of Israel, it's something that is seen, certainly for someone like Isaac Herzog, as a way of perhaps softening how the Israeli public might react to a potential peace negotiations, which recently have lost popularity, and this encouraging some form of regional reset across the region might help people accept that idea and it come across less of a traditional, the Israeli left pushing for concessions from Israel, but rather reaching out for new opportunities.
Ambassador Livne, is it likely that moderate Arab countries could welcome a dialogue with Israel before a peace agreement with the Palestinians is reached?
I doubt it. I think that they've said it all along, that there's got to be some sort of movement on the Israeli-Palestinian track before something else happens. But I think on the whole, there's an understanding, I think, and I think that most people will agree that if something happens, then things will also happen overtly on the regional level with other countries in the region. So I think that it will be good if we could jumpstart some sort of a process whereby we move with the Palestinians, and then we will see to what degree other countries in the Middle East.
The agreement actually does talk about advancing the Palestinian talks at the same time.
Obviously, I mean, I think that most Arab countries, all Arab countries, will not let the Palestinian issue fall by the wayside. For them, it's an important issue. I think for us, we should also come to grips and try to find some sort of a solution to this problem. But for them, yes, definitely. And I think that it behooves upon us and the Palestinians. Let me make it very clear. It's not something that is the sole responsibility of Israel. I think both sides, we have to have some sort of movement, some sort of progress, and then we will probably see some sort of movement from the other countries in the region.
All right, Dan, the 8-point English language document stresses the importance of moderate Arab countries in the region. You actually had a role in contacts with a few of those moderate countries.
Let me say it this way. There's a lot going on underneath the radar on this story, Steve, that is not known to the wider public. The idea of a regional peace initiative is not new. It is at least 7 or 8 years old. It's been batted back and forth by a number of regional players in the Middle East because of their deep disappointment in former President Obama. What I call the amenable Arab states to the West, the Egyptians, the Jordanians, and more recently the Saudis and the Gulf states, were extremely disappointed with the way Obama handled them as traditional allies in the United States, and the word became, we have to take our future into our own hands. Can't depend on the United States. That was up until 2017. That also included a reset in terms of how the Arab states related to Israel. As you notice, the Saudis came to Israel. They actually came to Israel. The Jordanians, the Egyptians, they're much more public with Israel. Where Ambassador Livni is quite right is that the Arab states are saying there has to be advancement on the Palestinian front because we, Arab states, can't govern if there isn't. Our publics are restive with regard to the Palestinian issue. We, though, want to advance our state interests with Israel, and the way to do that is through some combination of bilateral with the Palestinians and multilateral with the Arab states. One last point. You notice that that Netanyahu talked about adopting what was called the Arab Peace Initiative, but with no preconditions. And that turns the original Arab peace proposal initiative on its head, because it had demanded a return to the 1967 lines. This particular initiative that the Egyptians were particularly satisfied with had no initial preconditions attached.
Well, Ambassador Livni, the document states very clearly of the desire of the Israeli government to advance the two-state solution, and it reaffirms commitment of two states to the policy of two states for two peoples and the broader peace in the region. Why wouldn't the Palestinians buy into this? Will they buy into this?
That's a very good question. Look, there's no doubt that the Palestinians have some explanations to give. Over the years, they've been offered so many things, and they always found a way to walk away from an opportunity. I think that if the moderate countries, like the Saudis, the Egyptians, the Jordanians, and others, exercise some influence on the Palestinians and tell them, look, nobody's going to give you what you want outside the negotiating room. The only way to achieve something is through talking to the Israelis. The Israelis are 50% of the conflict. I think that the countries such as Saudi Arabia, other countries, influential actors, should somehow influence the Palestinians.
Bring them to the table.
Bring them to the table, and bring them to the table and bring them seriously. And then we'll see what happens.
All right, Dan, I want to look very briefly at the political side of this. I mean, the document talks about a curtailment of settlements in order to help facilitate this regional dialogue. Netanyahu couldn't really do this with his current government, could he? He would need a national unity government with the Labour Party inside or Lapid inside in order to advance this, wouldn't he? I mean,
I'm not sure, Steve. I mean, look what happened in the last 8 years. There has been a de facto settlement freeze in Jerusalem, de facto. There has been a de facto settlement slowdown in all of the national consensus settlement blocks from Gush Etzion to Ma'ale Adumim. And therefore, with this center-right government, Netanyahu has succeeded in order to get along with the Obama administration until the end of 2016. So no, I don't think you need a national unity government. I think that the national unity government Netanyahu was considering having Isaac Herzog join was because of the profound concern in Israel over the dangerous Iran deal that the United States.
He couldn't pull out the document out of the drawer now and explain to Naftali Bennett, we're going to make this our policy. We're going to publish
That's true. I don't think there. Frankly, my assessment is, Steve, that because of the tremendous tensions within the Arab world towards the Palestinians, I think we said on your program last week, there is an unprecedented anger at the moderate Sunni states towards the Palestinian Authority. Let's remember that just 2 days ago, a senior member of the Palestinian Authority, Jibril Rajoub, was sent back to the Palestinian Authority. President Sisi wouldn't let him into Egypt. That's the level of tension going on, and they're angry at the Palestinians because they say you've isolated yourself in the Sunni world with regard to the Iranian threat. You're only thinking of yourself. You become a thorn in our sides. So I think Ambassador Livni is quite right in saying they can bring the Palestinians to the table, not through the carrot, but through the stick. And I think that's what may be happening now.
All right, gentlemen, as you both know, the state controller has issued a report on the government handling of aspects of Operation Protective Edge, the Gaza engagement from the summer of 2014. The report issued a strong indictment of Prime Minister Netanyahu's security cabinet and claimed that the government lacked the strategic goals for Gaza. Well, 2.5 years later, rockets are still occasionally fired at Israel from Gaza, and the question today, as then, is what are Israel's policy goals? Before beginning our discussion, we'll hear a reaction to the report from Netanyahu. Defense Minister Lieberman comments on the current rocket fire, and JCPA Arab Affairs expert Yoni Ben Menachem speaks about the Gaza security dilemma.
האחריות הראשונה שלי כראש ממשלה היא כמובן לדאוג לביטחון מדינת ישראל ואזרחיה. כך עשינו במבצע צוק איתן. הכינו את החמאס את המכה הקשה ביותר שהוא ספג בתולדותיו. חיסלנו כ1,000 מחבלים של החמאס, את בכירי מפקדיו, הפלנו את מגדלי הטרור, פעלנו בעוצמה, באחריות ובתיאום מלא בין הדרג המדיני והצבאי. אף קבינט בתולדות המדינה לא עודכן יותר. וכשנכנסים לקבינט, צריך להשאיר בחוץ את הטלפון הסלולרי, את הפוליטיקה הקטנה או אינטרסים אישיים.
אין לנו שום רצון, שום כוונה ליזום שום מהלך צבאי ברצועת עזה. אבל גם אין לנו שום כוונה לספוג טפטופים. אנחנו לא ניכנס לפינג פונג של ירי וירי כנגד. ואני מציע לחמאס לקחת אחריות, לעשות סדר ולהירגע.
According to senior Israeli sources, Hamas movement in Gaza Strip has recovered from the effects of the last war in Gaza in the summer of 2014, and they rebuilt the tunnels that were destroyed by the IDF, and also manufactured all the rockets that were destroyed by the IDF. So now we are in the same position that we were in the summer of 2014. Hamas is very strong. There are thousands of rockets that are threatening the security of Israel, and there are also a few dozens tunnels which are prepared to attack Israel by smuggling into Israel, by infiltrating the terrorists into Israel in order to kidnap and kill Israelis, soldiers and civilians. This is a very dangerous situation for the state of Israel, but the IDF is following it very closely and also making preparations how to deal with it. The IDF is building actually a big wall deep in the ground in order to confront the danger of the tunnels, and also there are many new tactics of the IDF to deal with the Hamas threat. The question now is what Israel should do about the fact that Hamas is ready for a new war. Should Israel give a preemptive strike and attack the tunnels and the rockets before they use them against Israel, or it should sit and wait? I think this is mainly a political question. This is a subject to be decided by the political echelon in Israel and I think they have their own reasons and they know what to do, so we shall just have to sit and wait.
Ambassador Livni, when not in power, both Prime Minister Netanyahu and now Defense Minister Lieberman spoke about removing Hamas through a military operation, through force. Why is it that when they're in office and after much provocation, they back down and prefer a limited operation?
Because I think that Henry Kissinger, in one of his articles, wrote, where you stand depends on where you sit. So it's one thing you say, and even Arik Sharon said it.
Oh,
It's
Hebrew
a different,
comment.
yeah. I think that there's certainly political declarations and statements, and people make statements all the time. It's quite a different thing when you're in power. You have to you have a situation, you have to address it. Let's ask ourselves. Let's say that we do decide to take over Gaza. What do you do then? I'm not referring to the cost of such an operation, in terms of human lives, of all the costs that you can think of that are involved with such an operation. But what do you do then? I think the issue is deeper than that. I think the main question that Israeli decision makers have to deal with in the cabinet level, in government level, in civic society, as a nation as a whole, what is it do we want? How do we want to deal with Gaza?
All right, that's a question, not an answer.
No, because it's a question that I have my opinion. I'm sure you have an opinion. I'm sure everyone has an opinion. But it's something that the government has to decide what it is that it
Maybe
wants.
there's no real good answer.
It's also an answer. And the thing is, do we contain them? How do we contain them? Is there anything we can do to bring down the level of, not animosity, but the chances of renewed fighting?
So on that point, I wanted to ask Dan. Defense Minister Lieberman has suggested that we allow the building of a seaport, basically creating financial initiatives to better the life of the people in the Gaza Strip, basically so that they would have what to lose in the next round, that it would be in their interest to keep things quiet. Would that be a possible
When you talk about
solution?
in their interest, you're talking about the public or the leadership?
Well, the public who would then support it and hopefully pressure the leadership to keep things quiet because our lives are improving. We have a seaport, we can import things, we can leave the country on our own
Steve,
will.
wait a second. Let's bear in mind, we're talking about an Islamic tyranny. We're not talking about a democratic state like New Zealand or Israel. I mean, for goodness sakes, we're talking about a Gaza Strip in which you can be tortured and murdered if you don't subscribe to Sharia law. So I don't think the public has a particular say in this But having said that, I think what Defense Minister Lieberman is talking about is what the General Staff of the Israeli Army and the political level has been talking about for a long time, and that is we would like to have a Hamas in power whose wings have been clipped and can still administer what is a de facto statelet, an Islamic emirate in Gaza. Now, I think it's important to reiterate that Israel pulled out all of its military assets and its civilians in order to create what we thought would be Hong Kong on the Mediterranean, and what we got in response in 2005, 2006 was hundreds and hundreds and even thousands of rockets. So Israel has a dilemma, as the ambassador said. We've got to keep Gaza contained as long as there is a Hamas leadership that is a radical Islamic group, that is an outgrowth, there is a representative of the Muslim Brotherhood. There is very little chance that there will ever be, a what they call a real solution, because they are a non-status quo terrorist government that is completely dedicated to the destruction of Israel. So Israel has to maintain its security interests, keep Hamas in power, a weakened Hamas in power, so that the people of Gaza don't continue to suffer by the Hamas. Therefore, a seaport, Lieberman is thinking, might help them develop an economy and sort of create in the Hamas leadership a sense of status quo is better than trying to attack Israel, for which they would be probably probably killed and then replaced.
Ambassador Livni, is there any chance that if given enough incentives, we know they're never going to love us from Hamas, they're never going to recognize Israel's existence, they're never going to sing Hatikva, certainly not. But is there a chance that they can be convinced to be pragmatic enough for the good of their people to continue hating us, but to do it in a way in which there's no firing of rockets back and forth? Because we have no interests inside Gaza. We only want quiet from Gaza.
Look, I think that, as Dan said, I think we acquiesce with the existence of a Hamas entity in Gaza. The challenge, I think, that we all face, independently of political thinking, is how do you transmit, how do you broadcast, how do you make Hamas understand that you take a little step forward, we take a little step forward, you take a little step sideways, we take a little step sideways, and create a reality which is probably different than in many other countries, in many other places. Look, Taiwan and China hate each other, yet they have a way of working together. So I'm not comparing. But hopefully, there will be a way in which people in Gaza will feel that there is an option. So yeah, it will never be a
All right,
democracy.
we're almost out of time. Let me ask you both this, and whoever wants to go first can just jump right in, and that is, in the next couple of years, is there going to be yet another war between Israel and Gaza?
That's the $64,000 question, as they used to say in Hollywood, Steve. I think that where we are in Gaza is, as Yoni Ben Menachem said from the Jerusalem Center for Public Affairs, in a holding pattern. We're walking on a tightrope. Hamas understands that they will pay a very heavy price for provoking Israel into another counterterrorism campaign.
They're still rebuilding from the last heavy price.
They're still rebuilding, and there's also a very serious, chaotic situation within the Palestinian competition for power between the PLO and Hamas, and therefore they are taken up with that rift between the West Bank and Hamas. And I might say the people of Gaza are very dissatisfied with the Hamas. In fact, the Jerusalem media, the Palestinian-run the JMCC, the Jerusalem Media Center, reported this week, you can see it on the internet, that if there were elections today, the Hamas would lose in Gaza. That's the bottom line, what's happening.
Ambassador, my son just served in the Gaza war in 2014. Is my grandson going to be serving there as well?
I hope not.
Okay, well, that's all the time we have for today's broadcast. Thanks to my guests, Ambassador Yosef Livni and Dan Diker. I'm Steve Liebowitz, and until next week, this has been Israel Weekly.